Yesterday, if I remember correctly, we were able to bring the professionalism aspect of the conversation to a close, and so we should be moving on pretty soon to business communications and networking. So let's see. Okay, I think yesterday what we looked at was how these things relate to sales and selling and why these things are important. The common standards that we got from Nigerian professional courses of law, accounting, medicine, and engineering. The ideas about professionals having to dress a certain way, be punctual, communicate clearly, establish expectations, and use case management methods when working. So yesterday we had the wrapping up question about how these things are important to sales and selling and how they affect the money. And basically, it's because they help establish us as credible professionals. Because if we dress right and are punctual, people think we're credible. If we communicate well and use proper case management, then it makes us appear efficient and competent, and people trust us, and it makes selling easier. And so it's the same not just for lawyers and engineers and accountants, but it's also the same for wedding planners as well. Yes, if you appear credible and trustworthy, efficient and competent, and of course you are a kick-ass decorator or planner or photographer or whatever it is that you do in the wedding space, then it should make it easier for you to seal more deals and make more money. Was my friend Victor Antonio. Well, he's not really my friend, but he's another sales trainer that I listen to, Victor Antonio. He doesn't say make more money, he says make more money. Okay, that's one of my favorite phrases that he uses. Anyway, so before we move on to a different perspective that we're going to take, still slightly tied to this professionalism gist in a way. Okay, maybe that means we're not quite done, because what we wrapped up yesterday was the Nigerian professional courses approach. That is basically, what is professionalism? Professionalism is whatever Nigerian professional courses, i.e., law, accounting, medicine, and engineering, what they say it is. And then there's also the angle that there's a discipline of sales that has been around for a long time, and that's the discipline or the gospel that I'm trying to preach over here on this podcast. So we'll now look at professional sales etiquette and see what we can get from that. But before we move on, I would like to do a listener shout out. I'd like to shout out Linda Boom, Linda KPUM. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. And then I also like to shout out Enyi, that's ENYI, Enyi Sydney. I didn't see any photo on your profile, so I'm not sure if you're a guy or a girl. But since your name is Sydney, I'll just assume that you're a guy. So, so those are the listeners that I would like to shout out today. Linda Boom and Enyi Sydney for favoriting the podcast on the Anchor app. So thank you very much, guys, not just for listening, but for the obvious engagement that you are doing. Because all these likes, favorites, and shares are the way that other people discover the show. And it's because of listeners like you, dear Linda and dear Sydney, that we are currently at 1,500. And, not episodes, listens, 1,500. For episodes, I think I should check, but I think by now we should have hit 150. I'll be surprised if we haven't hit 150, because we're definitely over 100. I think we hit that in February or March. Anyway, so thank you very much, guys, to listeners like you who take the extra step of not just listening in your earbuds, but doing that extra step that make this podcast more visible, more notable, and more credible, because of folks like you who like and who share and engage in a very visible manner to the rest of the world. Which isn't to say that for those of you who listen without liking or sharing, which isn't to say that you're not important as well. You are, and I love you guys because you're here every day, every week, and some of you have been here for the past 1 year, and I owe the growth of the podcast and the spread of these ideas to you guys as well. So now that we're done with the listener shout out, I'd like to move on to what did I say? Yeah, professional sales etiquette. Yes. So, what can we learn from that, from traditional and old school ideas about sales, and how they can make us more professional, and how that relates to those of us in the wedding space, wedding planners, wedding photographers, and on and on. So, there's one idea that is pretty much gospel when it comes to traditional sales and selling, and it doesn't matter if you're talking to someone who sells insurance or who sells cars or who sells, I don't know, advertising, and it doesn't matter which sales professional that you listen to, whether it's the new crop of sales trainers in Nigeria or folks in America like Grant Cardone, Victor Antonio, and people in the UK like Will Barron and the rest of them, or even if you're talking to some other people who talk more of marketing like what's his name, J. Abrahams and co. So it doesn't matter from whichever angle, I mean, whoever it is that you're talking to, there's one thing that they all say, and I think we can take it as a cardinal rule when it comes to selling, and that is never be late. A professional salesperson is not supposed to be late. And remember, we are professional salespeople. You're not a professional wedding planner or a professional wedding photographer, because the first thing that we do in the business is to create a customer, is to provide visibility, and is to get people to walk through the door. It's only when we do that successfully that we now move on to exercising our craft as wedding decorators and planners and photographers and makeup artists and what have you. So, never be late. It's a cardinal rule, because if you're late and if you're sloppy, people will kind of assume that your service delivery will be sloppy, or maybe that your craft might be sloppy. So don't try and rail against the way that it is. It's just the way that people are, and it's just the way that the world is. So never be late. Always be on time. For those of you who've been listening to the older episodes, you're already familiar with my story about Ice Cube and how he was trying to mentor some black entrepreneur who was floating a clothing line and a skating skatewear and stuff like that. And the fellow showed up late for a meeting, and Ice Cube just totally ripped him a new one. I mean, Ice Cube shouted on the guy. I mean, this was back when I think it was MTV Base or something like that, some MTV channel where there was some MTV channel where they used to have some of these shows, and I can't remember the name of the show anyway. So Ice Cube was totally mad at him. Ice Cube told him, look, we're here, we're black, they already think we're niggas, because we're not like insurance people or whatever. And so as niggas, they expect us to be late. So we have to switch the game. You can't show up for a meeting saying that, oh, sorry, you woke up late, this, that. Be on time. And Ice Cube said something that I have never forgotten since then. Ice Cube said, if you can't be on time, be early. And it makes sense. Because for me, I have a problem being on time. My mother, on the other hand, she can be on time. She can tell you 10 o'clock, and 10 o'clock she's there. But for me, if I tell you 10 o'clock, the chances are most likely I might be there 10:30, 10:45, or whatever. So the solution for guys like me and like that skater boy, and Ice Cube also says he has a problem with being on time, is to be early. So in that case, agree with everybody for 10, but then tell yourself that, you know what, I'm going to make it there 9 a.m. sharp. And of course, because you have a problem with being on time, just like I do, you're aiming for 9 a.m., but guess what? You end up getting there for 9:30, and 9:30 is good enough and more than time enough for a 10 o'clock meeting. And since we wedding photographers, that's what I do, since we wedding photographers have a bad reputation, well, at least in Abuja and Lagos anyway, we have a reputation for always being late. It makes you seem different, like, photographer that shows up on time. Wow. Anyway, so that's one about never be late. So that's one thing that we get from old school ways of talking about selling. And then, of course, the old timers, the Tom Hopkins, Cardone, Brian Tracy, the rest of them, they also have plenty to say about dressing. So there's a lot to consume out there. So listen to whatever catches your fancy. But there's one interesting rule, or should I say principle or guidance, that I think we can all use. And there's this idea in old school selling, which is that you should always dress at the same level of your clients or dress one level above your clients. Let me repeat it again. There's this idea that you dress at the same level of your clients or your prospective customers, or you dress one level above, that you do not dress a level below, because it could cause you to lose face. So, what this means is, given the context, typically, if your client was going to be in business attire, then showing up in jeans and a t-shirt might mean that you get docked some points in the credibility department. You might think that you're not as credible. But let's say the business context is usually corporate casual, but then you show up with the suit and the tie, you're not going to be penalized per se. At the very most, people might think, this guy is really stuffy, but you're not going to be penalized the same way you would if you dress a step down. So think about the situation, think about the context, and then plan your dressing accordingly. So what are they expecting? What do they expect to see? And how do they dress? And then dress at the same level. There are lots of Abuja wedding folk who kind of buy into this philosophy, but in my own opinion, I think they take it too far, because then they also want to have the right kind of phone, the right kind of car, whatever kind of apparel is reigning at the time, and because of that, they might now seem inauthentic. And I really don't think you have to take it. You don't have to take it that far, or be that detailed in your packaging, as it's called. That's the term I don't like, but it's something I hear a lot. Anyway, people say, to do business in Abuja is all about packaging. So you don't have to take the packaging, in quote, that far. Just keep it nice and dress at the same level, or aim for a level above. So we've already gone past the 10-minute mark, and so I'm going to bring this episode to a close. So that's it. So those are two ideas that we can get from traditional ways of looking at sales and selling, and that if we follow these prescriptions will make us seem like we are much more professional, and make people much more open and amenable to working with us, and having them consider you to be the wedding planner or the wedding photographer or the MC for the day, because you weren't late, and because you have the right level, because you dress right, or as Abuja people say, because you package well. There are going to be other things that we'll look at. I think there are 4 or 5 other things that we can look at when it comes to old school professional ideas about sales etiquette. So what I'll do is, I think at the next episode, I'll just take another 2 and then maybe wrap it up with the final 3 the day after. So thank you very much, guys, for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based event and wedding photographer, Tavishima Ayede. I will catch you guys on the next episode. And again, Linda Boom and Enyi Sydney, thank you very much, guys, for favoriting and sharing the podcast. I really appreciate it. And you all have a wonderful day.